Мы заходили в деревню, да, некоторые были добровольцы, которые, ну, мародеры. Зашел я раз в помещение, да, там, туалет, душ в доме, да, у меня такого нет, понимаете, и мне было стыдно зайти. И вот вы как бы сравниваете меня со всеми, я не как все, это прям 100%.
То есть,
Точно, точно никак.
то есть у вас туалета, душа дома нету, да?
Да, он мне не нужен дома. Чтобы вонять и убирать в доме его постоянно.
А где вы
У меня туалет на улице.
А
Я
вы
в дерев-
срете на улице,
Я
да?
в деревне, да, живу. И то есть мне это нормально, мне туалет не надо мыть каждый день. И вони я ночью чувствовать не буду от него. Из-за того, что кто-то забыл смыть. Понимаете? Как бы так.
Серьезно? То есть у вас вот эта кабинка такая, да, деревянная там?
Возможно, да.
Да? И вам это все устраивает, да?
Да,
А вы пользоваться унитазами умеете?
да.
Умеете, да? Для чего? Какой стороной садиться на унитаз?
Задний.
Задней, да? То есть спиной
Да,
к стене, да? А
Да.
писсуар знаете, что такое?
да. Знаю. Я в любое общество захожу, я себя нормально чувствую. Я приличный человек.
А что вот вы говорите, мародерили, что забирали?
Люди.
Ну вот добровольцы, те, которые так, типа добровольцы, что забирали у украинцев?
Некоторые телевизоры тащили. Некоторые там телефоны забирали. При мне лично заходили в дом, взяли планшет, там зарядки какие-то. Но мне это не надо. У меня это было мое. Ну, то есть у меня украинские солдаты это взяли. Но я чужого не брал.
So that's kind of a trip, isn't it? Where he's like talking about his nonchalance about not having a toilet. Not necessarily that he doesn't have a toilet. I mean, for us in the Western world, that's somewhat of a shock value. But the fact that he's like, why would I want a toilet? That kind of blows me away. Where he's like, they're dirty. When we in the Western world, I've shit in porta potties and outhouses before when I was out in the field, when I was out in other countries. Incidentally, I had to use an outhouse when I was in Latvia. Not a big deal. But my house and all of the houses I've had in my nearly 40 years on this earth have had indoor plumbing, indoor toilets. And in fact, in the US, less than 0.5% of households lack an indoor toilet. So, and that's still a pretty good sized number when you think about the size of the US. But comparatively speaking to Russia, 20% of Russians lack indoor toilets. A whole 1/5 of that country doesn't have toilets in their house. And that's why he's so nonchalant about it. And a lot of people would say, well, it's a product of the Soviet Union and how far they fell behind. Well, that's not necessarily true, because the World Bank has a basic sanitation statistic that they put out every few years. The last one was done in 2020. And this basic sanitation metric measures access to improved sanitation facilities. And when they say that, it refers to the percentage of the population with at least adequate access to excreta disposal, so a way to get rid of your waste, those facilities, and they can effectively prevent human, animal, and insect contact with that human waste. They also have improved facilities, range from simple but protected pit latrines. So not even like the most advanced toilets. They just say pit latrines all the way up to flush toilets with a sewage connection. So the facility has to be correctly constructed. It has to be properly maintained, et cetera, et cetera. So because of that, the World Bank has issued every couple of years their statistics on this. So let's run through them. When it comes to access, a population's access to the basic sanitation facilities, 100% of the U.S. population have access to what the World Bank deems as effective waste management facilities. 100% of the U.S. Interestingly, the argument of, well, the former Soviet states are all struggling in this regard is not true, because Poland has access to 100%. 100% of their population has access to properly maintained waste management facilities. Other countries that we can run through is Australia, 100%. UK is 99%. Canada is 99%. Ukraine, who is arguably the poorest country in Europe, is 98%. 98% of Ukrainians, according to the World Bank, have access to effective waste management facilities. 98% of Belarus, another former Soviet state, essentially a proxy of Russia, but they seem to have figured out waste management comparatively to the other potential, not necessarily foe, but our potential adversary, China, 92% of the Chinese have access to effective waste management facilities. So where does that put Russia? Well, Russia's at 89%. So 11% of Russians do not have access to adequate and effective waste management facilities. This puts them on the same footing as Vietnam. Now, for funsies, we can kind of list the countries that are surprisingly ahead of Russia in this regard, have better sanitation conditions than Russia. And these include Syria at 90%. Syria, they have a civil war going on, and in 2020, the World Bank deemed that 90% of their population still has access to effective waste management facilities. Iran, 90%. Cuba, 91%. Libya, 92%. Mexico, 91%. All countries, although albeit slightly ahead, but still ahead of Russia when it comes to access to effective waste management facilities. So when you hear a Russian soldier like this talk about his lack of a need for toilets, we have to start wondering if the norm there isn't necessarily they don't have the capability. It's that, do the population even want access to flush toilets and proper waste management facilities when they can just go shit in the woods? I mean, they have a huge country, so maybe that's just how they operate, that they just go take dumps in the woods and stuff. Not sure there, but that's the statistics, and it's fascinating.